with a vague outline for a script and an even vaguer idea on how world building works, I think I'm going to explain the basis of my world. So, this is the world of SURAT. The first idea I had for it was when I was running a previous campaign and I was getting a bit bored of my world. It was very generic, it was the first one I made, and therefore in my opinion not very good. So I was looking around on a whole bunch of scientific world building things like Artifixian, I'll leave a link in the iCard, and there was one video on donut-shaped planets. I was intrigued because they are so incredibly fantastical and yet still scientifically could exist. They wouldn't, but there is a percentage chance that they could exist. It's small, in fact it's almost infinitely small, but in theory, and that's what hooked me. So, that was the basic idea. It was a donut-shaped planet. And the first few interesting things that I noticed were that the map could be it could be very simple, because if you go off the top you arrive at the bottom, and if you went off one side you'd come around on the other. Maps were one of the first things I started to sketch up. None of them have stuck, but the basic idea came from there. There's one super large continent, then one smaller one set of archipelagos, and then one strip which wrapped almost like diagonally around it, encompassing the very center. Then there was the second question, a solar system. How was that going to work? And here is where my ideals and I suppose you could call it philosophy for world building came up first. I wanted something to be a funny idea I had, and then work out why does this work, and how can I build on this to make it into something bigger and more amazing. So the first one I worked on was the sun. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if the sun floated around through the center of the planet? It was just an incredibly small, possibly even basketball-sized orb that was just very bright and very hot, and just floated around in the center. This was my idea, and there were a whole bunch of things on me trying to work out orbits, but I realized this world's going to have magic anyway. What if the sun is magic? And therefore it just bobs up and down in the center. And this was very cool, and this leads on to a whole bunch of other things which I'll be explaining at least one facet of in the next video. But in this one, I just want to explain how I do the world building. So, I get something, and I need to work out how can I make this exist logically. It boils down to, I want to make a world that logically elaborates from any idea into an even more interesting idea, and also backtracks to proving itself viable in its own logical system. So, yeah. The other main thing I wanted was an interesting magic system. I wanted it to be much more of a hard magic system. Although I went around this pretty badly, and since it's about D&D, the magic system in there is very soft. But I came up with this concept that a magic system, a hard magic system, the one that I wanted, could be a placebo effect. What if everyone already had the magic, but they just needed a way to express it? And eventually someone had the willpower to express it, and he did so through observing beauty and creating beautiful things, creating art. And then everyone took this to be the norm, and therefore magic is entirely based around being an art form, and everything beautiful has, to some extent, magic. I also wanted each person's magic to be very specific to them, like a person's art is. Everyone can learn from the same teacher, but after mastering it, they will have a very specific style. So that's why you get a whole bunch of people with large ranges, but after a while they will narrow down and become experts in their field. This was great. Then I came up with the question, okay, so magic is powerful and lots of incredibly strong magic can exist, magic that can even tear apart worlds. What about bringing people back from the dead? Here's where I hit an issue. Because I'm trying to think logically, yes, magic should be able to do this, because I haven't made any rules limiting magic so far, other than just willpower, and death is pretty powerful, so someone could have some sort of grieving magic that they feel the pain of death and therefore convert that into healing magic and bring them back. That's completely logical. But what about politics now? How does this elaborate and go further? Now kings are coming back and you'll have the same king for thousands of years and everything's kind of going wrong. So I needed to find another way of limiting it. What if I created another subtype of magic, which I called Dueling Magic? Because if you had this spell cast on you, or any form of this spell cast on you, it would have some harmful effects, but it would also age you. You would get older, much older very quickly, and when you die of old age, you can be brought back, but then you'll instantly die of old age again. And that leads to the next question. How do we elaborate on this? What if someone is very young and wants to grow up very quickly? They can use aging magic, but it means that they will lose out on their childhood and everything, and this could be great for a traumatic backstory and so on. And we might see that in the campaign. I'm planning on using this, and don't tell my players, in fact I have been using this. And yeah, so to prove this method a little more concretely, why don't we do a bit of world building right now? You can't influence me very much, but randomness can. So I thought of a very random thing. Let's say a cheesecake. How do we make cheesecake into a fundamental staple of a nation or a city-state or something? So, how do we do this? What can cheesecake be? How did we get to cheesecake? Obviously, cheesecake is pretty basic, so it's just materials. What can we do with it? Well, you can put different ingredients in it. You could poison people using cheesecake. So, we've got a crime syndicate that kills its people with cheesecake. How does it get there? It puts it in a shop front and poisons specific ones. So why don't we elaborate on this? This used to be how they did it. They poisoned a couple cheesecake as effectively a terrorism act, but they then took over the shop and continued making these poisoned cheesecakes. Now they deliver items hidden inside the cheesecake, a hidden courier system, and then this got captured. They got found out by the king or the whatnot of this area. Now their cheesecake scheme has been taken over, and they realize how useful it is and how organized these people were, because cheesecake is such a stupid front that nobody ever suspected it until, I don't know, the king himself accidentally bit into a cheesecake which wasn't for him and found like a key in it or something. So we've now got this cheesecake being taken over by the Spies Corporation, and this is how the spies are now infiltrating the underbelly of the society, and the criminal underworld is now being taken over by these cheesecake people, and the spies realize that they could use the underworld. If they could bring a connection to another country, they could use it as spying on them. So they send this cheesecake division of the spies over, and they do the same thing there, and then they send cheesecakes back and forth, and they use recipes as code, like the amount of certain ingredients. For example, if you have 2 ounces of blueberries, it means the king's royal guard, but 3 ounces might mean the king's personal guard, and 1 ounce might just mean the general guard, and everything like this. You can get a code. And what if this is where we get thieves' cant? Thieves' cant is actually just recipes for various types of cheesecake, and this obviously gets elaborated into biscuits and so on, and eventually you get experts where you can send someone a cookie, they eat it, they can derive, like a wine taster, they can work out which ingredients are in it, and therefore by eating something they gain information, and this food trade becomes a secret underground network. That sounds cool to me. Obviously it's a little bit extreme and kind of chaotic, and a little weird if I say so myself, but that's kind of cool, and for the world that I'm building I do want a little bit of chaos, but you can see the most random thing kind of went chaotic. I tried to link it to as much as I could, and then I brought it back down and tried to work out how do humans, or at least the species that lives there, manipulate this to their advantage. So, I hope you liked my random ramblings on cheesecake and world building, and if you want, you can even use this cheesecake system for your own worlds, and if you do, please send me a comment. I read them all, and I will happily discuss anything you like in the comment section below. Goodbye, and see you with the next video. Hint, this one will be using the cheesecake principle to work out how society physically structures itself. Have fun!